Five Absurdities of John F. Kennedy Introduction. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into American history to uncover the five absurdities of John F. Kennedy. Prepare yourselves for a journey that will challenge your perceptions about one of the most iconic and enigmatic presidents of the United States. John F. Kennedy, a name synonymous with hope, charisma, and an era of optimism, hides in his biography facts that for many border on the absurd. From personal secrets to questionable political decisions, the truth behind the myth is far more complex than history books tell us. Stay with us, because what you're about to discover may forever change how you view America's 35th president. Absurdity number 1, the Pulitzer Prize and the ghostwriter. Our first absurdity takes us to the year 1957, when John F. Kennedy, still a senator, was honored with the prestigious Pulitzer Prize for his book, Profiles in Courage. The work, which celebrated American senators who demonstrated great moral courage, was acclaimed by critics and the public alike. However, what many didn't know, and what would only come to light years later, is that a large part of the book was actually written by someone else. His talented and loyal assistant, Ted Sorensen. Ted Sorensen, a brilliant intellectual and prolific writer, was Kennedy's main speechwriter and text author for many years. The extent of his contribution to Profiles in Courage has been the subject of debate and controversy for decades. Although Kennedy claimed to have written the book, evidence suggests that Sorensen played a fundamental, perhaps even predominant role in its creation. Reports from the time indicate that Kennedy was frequently ill and absent, leaving most of the work to Sorensen. This fact raises a disturbing question. How courageous is it to receive an award for work that wasn't entirely your own? The revelation of Sorensen's involvement tarnished Kennedy's literary reputation and generated discussions about the ethics of authorship in politics. For many, the idea of a president being awarded for a book written by a ghostwriter is at the very least absurd. It's a reminder that behind the curtains of power, the truth can be more complex and less heroic than we imagine. The controversy surrounding the authorship of Profiles in Courage is not merely a biographical detail. It touches the core of intellectual integrity and the construction of public image of political figures. The book, published in 1956, was an instant success, catapulting Kennedy to national stardom and solidifying his reputation as a serious intellectual and visionary leader. However, whispers about the true extent of Ted Sorensen's contribution began almost immediately after publication and intensified after Kennedy's death. Ted Sorensen, a young and brilliant lawyer, joined Kennedy's team in 1953 and quickly became his closest confidant and main writer. He was known for his ability to synthesize complex ideas into clear and persuasive prose, a skill that Kennedy, though intelligent, did not possess to the same degree. The relationship between the two was symbiotic. Kennedy provided the political vision and platform, while Sorensen translated these ideas into eloquent words. The evidence pointing to Sorensen's substantial authorship is diverse. Letters, memos, and book drafts show Sorensen's handwriting and annotations on much of the material. Furthermore, Sorensen himself, in his later memoirs and interviews, admitted to playing a significant role in writing the book, though he always minimized his contribution to protect Kennedy's image. He described his work as substantial help and collaboration, but many historians and biographers interpret this as a diplomatic way of saying he was the primary author. Another crucial point is Kennedy's health at the time of writing the book. He was recovering from several back surgeries and suffered from Addison's disease, which left him frequently debilitated and unable to dedicate himself intensively to writing. It was Sorensen who spent hours at the Library of Congress, researching and compiling information about the senators who would be profiled in the book. He was also responsible for structuring the chapters, developing the arguments, and polishing the language. Despite growing evidence, Kennedy always maintained that he was the primary author, In his Pulitzer acceptance speech, he thanked Sorensen but described him as a research assistant, minimizing his role. This denial, though understandable in the political context of the time, contributed to perpetuating a myth that for many is one of the great absurdities of American history. The idea that such a prestigious award could be granted for work that is not entirely by the author raises questions about the integrity of the awards themselves and how history is told and retold. The impact of this controversy goes beyond the mere question of who wrote what. It raises broader questions about authenticity in politics and the fine line between collaboration and authorship. In an era where public image is carefully managed, the story of Profiles in Courage serves as a reminder that the truth behind narratives can be much more complex and sometimes surprising. It's an absurdity that forces us to question what we really know about our heroes and the stories we're told. The shadow of the ghostwriter looms over Kennedy's literary legacy, adding a layer of ambiguity to an already complex figure. The discussion about the book's authorship continues today, with historians and biographers presenting new evidence and interpretations. But the essence of the absurdity remains. A Pulitzer for a book that may not have been entirely his own. Absurdity number 2, The Secret Life and Health Problems. The second absurdity plunges us into John F. Kennedy's personal life, an aspect that he and his team strive to keep secret from the public. Behind the image of a young and vigorous leader, Kennedy faced a series of chronic and debilitating health problems. He suffered from Addison's disease, a rare condition affecting the adrenal glands, causing extreme fatigue, muscle weakness, and other severe symptoms. To combat the disease, Kennedy depended on a rigorous routine of medications, including steroids, which he took daily. The extent of his health problems was so severe that on several occasions he received last rites, the Catholic ritual for the dying. In addition to his health battles, Kennedy's personal life was marked by a series of extramarital affairs. Rumors and evidence suggest he had relationships with various women, including the famous Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood actresses, and even White House interns. These affairs, if confirmed in their entirety, paint a picture of a man with a double life, maintaining a facade of an exemplary husband and father while engaging in questionable conduct. The irony is that while the nation saw him as a symbol of morality and virtue, his private life was a whirlwind of secrets and scandals. Maintaining these secrets required a colossal effort from his team and the media of the time, which largely cooperated to protect the president's image. The idea that such an admired leader could have such a tumultuous personal life and such fragile health, all kept secret from the public, is an absurdity that challenges the notion of transparency and integrity in politics. It reveals the complexity of the man behind the myth and the extent to which public image can be carefully constructed and protected. John F. Kennedy's public image was that of a young, athletic, and vibrant man, a symbol of a new generation of leadership. However, this carefully constructed image hid a much more fragile and complex reality. Since childhood, Kennedy was tormented by a series of diseases and health problems that accompanied him throughout his life. The most serious of these was Addison's disease, a rare and potentially fatal endocrine condition that affects the body's ability to produce essential hormones. The Addison's diagnosis was made in 1947, but was kept secret from the public and even from many of his political colleagues. At that time, the disease was poorly understood and often associated with a short life expectancy. For Kennedy, a man with high political ambitions, revealing his condition could have been a fatal blow to his career. He depended on a daily regimen of medications, including cortisone injections, to control the disease's symptoms. These injections, while vital for his survival, also caused side effects such as swelling and mood changes. In addition to Addison's disease, Kennedy suffered from a series of other ailments. He had chronic back problems resulting from injuries suffered during World War II, which required several surgeries and the constant use of an orthopedic brace. He also suffered from colitis, an inflammation of the colon, and osteoporosis, which made his bones fragile. On several occasions, his health deteriorated to the point where he received last rites, a Catholic ritual for the dying. The frequency with which this occurred, 3 times before becoming president, is a testament to the severity of his conditions. Kennedy's team, led by his father, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., and his personal physician, Dr. George G. Berkeley, worked tirelessly to keep these health problems secret. Medical reports were falsified, and the media was carefully managed to present an image of vigor and vitality. The press of the time largely cooperated with this narrative, avoiding reporting on the president's health problems. This pact of silence, though understandable in the context of the time, is an absurdity in light of current standards of transparency and accountability. His health problems were only part of John F. Kennedy's secret life. The other side, much more scandalous, was his propensity for extramarital affairs. Kennedy's image as a faithful husband and family man was a carefully maintained facade for the public. In reality, he was an inveterate womanizer, with a long list of lovers that included Hollywood actresses, White House interns, and even an alleged connection with an East German spy. The most famous and widely publicized affair was with iconic actress Marilyn Monroe. Although the extent and exact nature of their relationship remains shrouded in mystery and speculation, the connection between the two is one of the most open secrets in American history. There are reports of secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, and even a birthday serenade for the president. Monroe's premature death, shrouded in suspicious circumstances, only fueled conspiracy theories and public curiosity about her relationship with Kennedy. Besides Monroe, Kennedy had other notorious affairs. One was with Judith Campbell Exner, a woman who claimed to have had a relationship with Kennedy while he was senator and president, and who was also involved with prominent mafia figures like Sam Giancana. The revelation of this relationship, years after Kennedy's death, raised serious questions about national security and the president's vulnerability to blackmail. Another case that came to light was with Mary Pinchot Meyer, a Washington socialite and ex-wife of a CIA agent. Meyer, who was also murdered under mysterious circumstances, allegedly had an intimate relationship with Kennedy and had introduced him to the use of psychedelic drugs. These revelations, though shocking, paint a picture of a president who lived a double life, risking his reputation and the country's security for personal pleasure. Kennedy's ability to keep these secrets for so long is a testament to the power of the media of the time and the culture of deference toward political leaders. The press largely chose not to report on these scandals, protecting the president's image and the narrative of an idealized White House. However, after his death, and with the advent of a more investigative press, these secrets began to come to light, revealing a side of Kennedy that many would prefer to ignore. The absurdity of Kennedy's secret life lies in the contradiction between public image and private reality. He was a man who inspired millions with his idealistic rhetoric and his vision of a new frontier, but who, at the same time, lived a life of secrets, diseases, and infidelities. This duality forces us to question the authenticity of leadership and the extent to which public image can be manipulated. It's a reminder that behind every historical figure there is a complex human being with their own flaws and contradictions, and that the truth is not always as simple as we would like it to be. The revelation of these secrets adds a layer of humanity and, for some, absurdity to the legacy of one of the most revered presidents in American history. Absurdity number 3, the Bay of Pigs. Invasion failure. Our third absurdity takes us to the Cold War scenario and one of the greatest fiascos in American foreign policy, the Bay of Pigs invasion. In April 1961, just a few months after assuming the presidency, Kennedy inherited from the Eisenhower administration a CIA plan to overthrow Fidel Castro's regime in Cuba. The plan involved training and supporting a group of Cuban exiles who would land at the Bay of Pigs with the objective of starting a popular revolt against Castro. However, the operation was a disaster from the beginning. The lack of promised air support, unexpectedly strong resistance from Cuban forces, and failure to inspire an internal revolt led to the rapid defeat of the invaders. Many were killed or captured, and the United States' image was severely tarnished on the international stage. Kennedy, who had approved the operation, took full responsibility for the failure, but the incident exposed the inexperience of his young administration and the complexity of clandestine operations. The absurdity here lies in the apparent naivety and lack of risk assessment by the Kennedy administration. How could such a poorly conceived plan with so many obvious flaws be approved? The Bay of Pigs invasion is a somber reminder that even the most well-intentioned leaders can make catastrophic mistakes with lasting consequences. It's a chapter that many prefer to forget, but which serves as a warning about the dangers of foreign intervention and excessive confidence in flawed intelligence information. The Bay of Pigs invasion, which occurred in April 1961, is one of the most embarrassing episodes in the history of United States foreign policy and a landmark in John F. Kennedy's presidency. The plan, conceived during the Eisenhower administration, aimed to overthrow the newly installed communist regime of Fidel Castro in Cuba. The idea was to train and arm a group of Cuban exiles, Brigade 2506, to invade the island, provoke a popular uprising, and thus restore a pro-American government. However, what followed was a monumental disaster that exposed the inexperience and, for many, the arrogance of the young Kennedy administration. From the beginning, the CIA plan was flawed. It was based on optimistic and unrealistic premises, such as the belief that the Cuban population would rise en masse to support the invaders. Furthermore, the operation's security was compromised, and Castro was well aware of the preparations. Brigade 2506, composed of about 1,400 exiles, was poorly trained and equipped to face the Cuban military forces, which were much larger and better organized. Kennedy, upon assuming the presidency, was confronted with the decision to proceed or cancel the operation. Despite warnings from some of his advisors, who pointed out the plan's flaws and his own initial hesitation, he eventually gave the green light, but with a crucial condition. The air support promised to the invaders would be drastically reduced to avoid the impression of direct U.S. intervention. This decision, which aimed to maintain a certain degree of plausible deniability, ended up sealing the operation's fate. On April 17, 1961, Brigade 2506 landed at the Bay of Pigs, a swampy and difficult-to-access area. Cuban resistance was immediate and overwhelming. Without adequate air support, the invaders were quickly cornered and massacred. In less than 72 hours, the operation was a total failure. About 1,200 exiles were captured, and more than 100 were killed. The United States' image was severely shaken on the international stage, and Kennedy's credibility as a leader was called into question. The Bay of Pigs failure had profound consequences. For Castro, it was a propaganda victory that solidified his power and popularity in Cuba. For the United States, it was a public humiliation that exposed CIA incompetence and White House lack of judgment. Kennedy, in a gesture of responsibility, publicly assumed blame for the disaster, stating, "There's an old saying that success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. I am the father of this one." However, assuming responsibility did not erase the absurdity of the situation. How could a superpower like the United States make such a primary error? The answer lies in a combination of factors: flawed intelligence, overconfidence, poor communication between government agencies, and political pressure to act against Castro. The incident also served as a catalyst for the Cuban Missile Crisis, which would occur the following year, and which would bring the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Bay of Pigs invasion is an absurdity that serves as a case study on the dangers of secret intervention and hasty decision-making. It's a reminder that even the most charismatic and popular leaders can be victims of their own mistakes and the complexity of the geopolitical scenario. The legacy of this failure continues to haunt American history, a testament to the fragility of power and the unpredictability of events. The lesson of the Bay of Pigs is clear. Arrogance and lack of planning can lead to disasters of epic proportions, regardless of intentions. Absurdity number 4. The assassination conspiracy theories. The fourth absurdity transports us to November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated. The event shocked the world and has since been the epicenter of countless conspiracy theories. Although the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the assassination, the simplicity of this explanation never satisfied many. Conspiracy theories vary widely, from the involvement of the Mafia, the CIA, the KGB, anti-Castro groups, to even the US government itself. The lack of clarity around certain aspects of the investigation, such as the magic bullet and Oswald's quick death by Jack Ruby, fueled public distrust. Millions of people around the world still believe there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy and that the truth was never fully revealed. The absurdity here is not just the tragedy of the assassination itself, but the persistence and proliferation of theories that challenge the official narrative. The government's inability to completely dispel doubts and public distrust is a testament to the complexity of the event and the deep mark it left on the American psyche. It's a reminder that for many, the official truth is only part of the story, and that the mystery surrounding Kennedy's death continues to be one of the greatest absurdities of modern history. The assassination of John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, is one of the most traumatic and controversial events in American history. The world stopped upon learning of the young and charismatic president's death, and the nation plunged into deep mourning. The Warren Commission, created to investigate the assassination, concluded in 1964 that Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine with communist connections, acted alone in shooting Kennedy. However, this conclusion, despite being official, was never fully accepted by much of the public and gave rise to countless conspiracy theories that persist to this day. The core of the controversy lies in several inconsistencies and obscure points in the investigation. The most famous is the magic bullet theory, which suggests that a single projectile, fired by Oswald, was responsible for wounding Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally, who was in the same car. The complex and improbable trajectory of this bullet, as described by the Warren Commission, led many to question the possibility of a single shooter. Critics argue that the bullet would have had to change direction several times to cause the wounds in both men, which would be physically impossible. Another point of contention is the speed with which Lee Harvey Oswald was assassinated by Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, just 2 days after Oswald's arrest. For many, Oswald's death silenced a potentially crucial witness and prevented the truth from coming to light. The lack of a complete trial of Oswald left many questions unanswered and fueled suspicion that there was something more behind the assassination. Conspiracy theories surrounding JFK's assassination are vast and varied, ranging from the involvement of American government agencies such as the CIA and FBI, to the Mafia, anti-Castro groups, the Soviet KGB, and even Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson himself. Each theory presents its own narrative, with evidence and testimonies that, for their defenders, contradict the official version. The persistence of these theories, even after decades of investigations and the release of millions of documents, is a testament to the profound distrust the event generated in the public. The distrust is fueled by several factors. The government's initial lack of transparency, the retention of documents for many years, and inconsistencies in witness testimonies contributed to a climate of skepticism. Furthermore, the shocking and unprecedented nature of a president's assassination in broad daylight, in a country that prided itself on its democracy and stability, made it difficult for many to accept such a simple explanation as that of a single deranged shooter. The absurdity here is not just the tragedy of the assassination itself, but the government's inability to provide a narrative that satisfies the majority of the population. The persistence of conspiracy theories, even in the face of official evidence, demonstrates the fragility of public trust and the need for transparency in times of crisis. JFK's assassination continues to be an open wound in the American psyche, an event that for many remains shrouded in mystery and serves as a somber reminder that truth can be more elusive than we would like to believe. The search for truth, or at least for a more satisfactory explanation, continues to drive researchers, historians, and conspiracy enthusiasts, making Kennedy's assassination one of the greatest unresolved absurdities of modern history. Absurdity number 5, nepotism and Robert Kennedy's appointment. Our fifth and final absurdity leads us to a decision that, for many, was a clear example of nepotism. The appointment of Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's younger brother, to the position of Attorney General of the United States. In 1961, when JFK assumed the presidency, he chose his brother, who was only 35 years old and had little experience in federal law, to lead the Department of Justice. The appointment generated immediate and widespread criticism. Many questioned Robert's qualification for such an important position, arguing that his previous experience as chief counsel of the McClellan Committee, which investigated union corruption, did not prepare him to be the country's chief lawyer. The perception was that the appointment was a personal favor, a way to consolidate the Kennedy family's power rather than a choice based on merit. Although Robert Kennedy proved to be an effective attorney general in many areas, especially in the fight against organized crime and in defending civil rights, the controversy surrounding his initial appointment persists. The absurdity here is the apparent contradiction between the ideals of public service and the practice of favoring family members in positions of power. It's a reminder that even in administrations that promise a new frontier, old political practices can prevail, challenging the notion of meritocracy and justice. Robert Kennedy's appointment is an example of how power and family can intertwine in ways that for some are simply absurd. The fifth and final absurdity we'll explore in John F. Kennedy's life concerns a decision that for many was a clear example of nepotism and generated considerable controversy at the time: the appointment of his younger brother, Robert F. Kennedy, to the position of Attorney General of the United States. In January 1961, when John F. Kennedy assumed the presidency, one of his first and most surprising decisions was to nominate his brother, then 35 years old, to head the Department of Justice. The reaction to the appointment was immediate and largely negative. Critics from both sides of the political spectrum questioned Robert Kennedy's qualification for such an important position. Although he had a law degree from the University of Virginia and some experience as chief counsel of the McClellan Committee, which investigated union corruption, his legal career was relatively short, and he lacked significant experience in federal law or in administering a department as vast as the Department of Justice. For many, Robert Kennedy's appointment was a clear case of family favoritism, a way to consolidate Kennedy family power in the White House. The press of the time did not spare criticism, with editorials and cartoons satirizing the decision. The idea that such a crucial position for law enforcement and justice in the country could be filled based on family ties rather than merit and proven experience was seen as a disrespect to democratic principles. However, defenders of the appointment argued that Robert Kennedy was a man of great intelligence, energy, and unquestionable loyalty to the president. They pointed to his work on the McClellan Committee, where he demonstrated tenacity and a strong work ethic in fighting organized crime. Furthermore, the trust relationship between the brothers was seen as an asset, allowing the president to have a confidant and loyal executor of his policies in the Department of Justice. Despite initial criticism, Robert Kennedy ended up proving to be a surprisingly effective and influential attorney general. He excelled in fighting organized crime, pursuing prominent mafia figures, and obtaining significant convictions. He also played a crucial role in defending civil rights, using the power of the Department of Justice to enforce segregation laws and protect black voters in the South. His performance in these areas often put him in direct confrontation with governors and state authorities, but he acted with determination and courage. However, even with his successes, the controversy surrounding his initial appointment never completely disappeared. The absurdity here lies in the tension between political practice and the ideals of meritocracy. Robert Kennedy's appointment, although it proved effective in retrospect, raised important questions about the ethics of nepotism and how power is exercised. It's a reminder that even in administrations that promise a new frontier and an era of idealism, old political practices can persist, challenging the notion that merit is always the only criterion for public service. The case of Robert Kennedy as Attorney General is a complex example of how nepotism can, paradoxically, lead to positive results, but also of how it can undermine public trust and raise questions about the integrity of the system. It's an absurdity that forces us to reflect on the nuances of power and politics and on the fine line between family loyalty and public service. Robert Kennedy's story at the Department of Justice is a testament to his own capacity, but also a constant reminder of the controversial decision that brought him to that position. Conclusion. We've reached the end of our journey through the 5 absurdities of John F. Kennedy. From the questionable Pulitzer Prize to the secrets of his personal life, the Bay of Pigs failure, the conspiracy theories surrounding his assassination, and the nepotism controversy, JFK's story is a mosaic of triumphs and paradoxes. These absurdities don't necessarily diminish his historical importance or his legacy, but they invite us to look beyond the official narrative and question the complexities of power and public figure. John F. Kennedy continues to be a fascinating figure, a man who embodied an era of great hopes, but who also carried with him a series of contradictions. By exploring these absurdities, we don't seek to denigrate his image, but rather to offer a more complete and nuanced view of a leader who, like all of us, was imperfect. History, after all, is made of nuances, and it's in exploring these nuances that we find true understanding. If you found this video thought-provoking, leave your like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analyses of the mysteries and hidden truths of history. Until next time.